I was holding a frozen turkey in one arm and my life in the other when the deadbolt slid shut. The click was small, but it carried the weight of 49 Thanksgivings. Through the wood, my wife's voice, steady, like she'd practiced, said, "It's better this way, Mike." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I jammed my key into the lock anyway. It turned nothing. The satin nickel deadbolt gleamed under the porch light, new, unfamiliar, not mine. Then the bulb went dark, and I was standing in the cold, my turkey dripping meltwater into my sleeve. The Ring camera I installed blinked red, recording me for an account I no longer controlled. On the mat sat a manila envelope. Inside, a glossy realtor's brochure, our house staged like a stranger's, and a note in Linda's hand, "We'll talk after the holiday. Don't make this messy." A phone alert buzzed in my pocket. Patel Bank, unusual activity November 20th. Same day last week. Same day she stopped answering texts. My gut knew before my head did, money was already moving. I knocked once more. A man's voice this time, my brother-in-law Evan, "Walk away, Mike. This place isn't yours anymore." I walked. Not because he told me to, but because the turkey was thawing and I had nowhere to put it. In the truck, the dashboard clock rolled to 6:49 p.m., Thanksgiving Eve. I scribbled in the notebook I've carried since my shop class days, November 27th. Locked out. New lock. Realtor note. Bank alert November 20th. I started the F-150. The grocery sacks, cranberry cans, pie shells, Linda's store-bought gravy, slid across the bench seat. Headlights flared ahead. A minivan sat dead on the shoulder, hazards blinking like a dying heartbeat. I pulled over. A young couple inside, Rob and Maria. 2 kids asleep in the back, cheeks pink from the cold. "Break job last week," Rob said. "Shop on Madison." He handed me a crumpled receipt, $1,462, dated November 20th, Evan's garage letterhead stamped across the top. Maria scrolled her phone, found a 38-second clip. Evan's voice came through clear as winter air, "We pad the rotors, nobody checks." Time stamped November 20th, 3:17 p.m. Same day as my bank alert. Same day the house began slipping out from under me. I nearly dropped the phone. My chest tightened like a vice, but my hands still worked by muscle memory. I bought hot chocolates for the kids, unspooled my toe strap, and hauled them off the shoulder to a safer lot. Under the gas station lights, I slipped the receipt into my jacket beside the realtor's brochure. Both carried the same date, November 20th. That was the night I realized my pension wasn't numbers on a statement, it was brick, wood, and trust. And both had just been stripped away. The strap was still in my hands, but it felt like they'd just towed my whole life away. The wind cut sharper when I pulled the truck into the gas station lot. The minivan hissed softly as it cooled, kids still bundled under their coats in the back seat. Rob shook my hand like I'd hauled them out of a river. Maria pressed the receipt into her purse, careful, like she knew it was more than paper. I walked inside the station, bought 4 hot chocolates, and carried them back with napkins that fluttered like little flags in the breeze. The kids stirred awake, blinking at me like I'd been sent by somebody kinder than fate. "Thank you, mister," the boy whispered. I nodded, but inside my chest, something was breaking. Maria showed me the video again, 38 seconds of Evan, clear as day. "We pad the rotors, nobody checks. If it squeals, bring it back, we'll bill again." His voice, smug and casual, like ripping off families, was just Tuesday. The timestamp on the clip, November 20th, 3:17 p.m., matched the date of my bank alert. Same day. My wife and her brother had been moving money and scamming breaks in the same breath. I tucked the receipt into my jacket pocket, right next to the glossy brochure from my porch. One was the house I was losing. The other was the proof of who they really were. By the time I got back in the truck, the turkey had leaked through the plastic. My seat was damp, cold soaking through denim. I leaned my forehead against the steering wheel and let the defroster roar until the windows fogged. For a few minutes, I couldn't move. Couldn't think. Linda had shut me out with one sentence, one deadbolt. My whole retirement was in that house, every repair, every weekend of sweat poured into bricks and shingles. I didn't have a pension stacked in stocks. I had it nailed into joists, stored in insulation, tied up in a roof I tarred myself. And now I was locked out like a tenant 2 months behind. I dialed her. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. This time, the message was different: this subscriber has blocked incoming calls. That was it. Linda didn't just change the locks, she cut the line clean. I thought of my father, the way he'd hand me a wrench in the garage and say, "Mike, write it down. Problems go quiet when they're on paper." So I reached for the small notebook in my glove box. I wrote, November 27th, 7:40 p.m. receipt, $1,462, Evans shop. Video clip, 3:17 p.m., November 20th. Bank alert, same day. Realtor note, same night. I underlined the date November 20th 3 times. The wind rattled the truck. I sat there, frozen turkey sweating beside me, and realized I didn't have a house to go back to. For the first time in 30 years, I didn't know where I'd sleep. That's when the weight of it all dropped on me, like a beam sagging until it finally snaps. My wife, my brother-in-law, the money, the house, it was all moving behind my back. And I was the only one standing still. Maria knocked softly on my window. "We'll be okay," she said. Her breath fogged the glass. I nodded, forced a smile. They were strangers, but I'd just towed them out of danger. And yet, I was the one stranded. When they left, receipt and video safe in their hands, I stayed parked under the buzzing fluorescent lights. My chest felt hollow, like the house itself had been ripped out of me. I thought about going to a motel, but I couldn't bring myself to waste the cash. Instead, I drove aimlessly down I-480, the highway lights blurring into streaks. Every green sign felt like a door closing: Parma, closed. Strongsville, closed. The turkey sat like a useless anchor beside me. Somewhere between exits, I laughed, a hollow, broken sound, because I realized how ridiculous it was. A grown man with nowhere to go, clutching a frozen bird he couldn't even cook. But that laugh turned sharp. Because ridiculous or not, I had proof. A receipt with Evan's letterhead. A video clip with his voice. A bank alert tied to the same date. Paper and ink. Time and numbers. Enough to start a line. I pressed harder on the wheel and whispered to myself, "You write it down, you cut it square, you build from the mess." That night, I parked at my storage unit, C12, the one I'd kept for camping gear and my father's old tools. I unrolled a tarp on the concrete floor, tucked my jacket under my head, and put the receipt and brochure under my chest like a shield. I didn't sleep much. Every time the wind howled through the corridor, it felt like Linda's voice at the door again, "It's better this way, Mike." By morning, my hands were shaking, not from the cold but from knowing I'd either sink quietly or start cutting lumber for something stronger. And I wasn't ready to sink. Thanksgiving morning hit like ice. Cleveland streets were silent, salt trucks already out, and my windshield glazed with frost so thick I had to scrape with a paint scraper from the toolbox. I'd slept on the tarp in my storage unit, C12, body aching, the smell of dust and oil clinging to my clothes. My red folder was pressed under my arm all night, like a child clutching a blanket. Inside, the realtor brochure, Evan's $1,462 brake job receipt, my scribbled notes, and the date November 20th underlined 3 times. At 7:06 a.m., I pulled out, the truck's heater wheezing. I kept thinking about Rob and Maria, their faces when they showed me that video. They didn't know they'd just handed me a crowbar, the kind you slide under a rotten board to see what's underneath. I drove them back to my unit first. They had nowhere to go until family arrived later in the day. I gave them a space heater from my camping bin, 2 wool blankets I hadn't touched since a fishing trip in '05. Maria smiled like it was a fortune. "We'll be okay," she said. And maybe they would. By 8:30 a.m., I was parked outside a low brick storefront with faded letters, Dwyer Notary, EST 1971. Mr. Dwyer had notarized my first mortgage back in the 90s. Retired now, he still kept his ledgers, an old habit from men who know paper is what keeps truth from blowing away. He squinted when I walked in, then lit up. "Mike Reed, shop teacher, right? You taught my grandson how to weld." I told him I needed to see his November book. His hands shook a little as he pulled a hardbound ledger from the shelf, spine cracked from decades of use. He ran a finger down the page. "November 20th, you say?" And there it was. 2:40 p.m., my name, written in ink. Co-borrower, Linda Reed. Loan type, HELOC. Only problem? Not my signature. I've signed Michael Reed the same way for 30 years, blocky, straight, carpenter's hand. This one slanted, shaky. I pointed. "That's not me." Dwyer frowned. "And it's not my stamp. That's Caro." He tapped the margin. "She's sloppy. Been warned before." He flipped another page and found a photocopied slip. Patel Bank, $118,000 draw. Annotated, holiday close. I took out my phone. "Mind if I?" He nodded. I snapped photos. Every date, every page. "If this goes to court," I asked, "will you put that in writing?" He didn't hesitate. "Mike, I'll swear to it." At 10:15 a.m., my phone buzzed, Coach Lila. She'd heard through the grapevine. "Union lawyer hotlines open today until noon," she said. "Don't wait." I sent the photos through. 10 minutes later, a banker named Ms. Patel called me directly. "If your signature was forged, we can request an immediate fraud hold and file a suspicious activity report. But I'll need you here Monday to confirm." "Hold it," I said. "Freeze every dime." She paused, then said, "I'll start the paperwork." By 11 a.m., I sat in my truck outside a shuttered diner, pen in hand, notebook open. The plan was beginning to write itself. Step 1, freeze the money. Step 2, secure the house. Step. Because every scam, every forgery, every lock changed in the dark, they'd all be dragged into the light of a dinner table where they least expected it. And when the pies came out of the oven, so would the truth. Saturday, November 30th. The city buzzed with leftover holiday chaos, mall parking lots jammed, families dragging fir trees onto roofs. For me, tension felt like an electric wire running just under my skin. I wasn't in a rush for gifts. I was building a record. At 9 a.m., my phone chimed. Tara, my sister-in-law, sent a bubbly text, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow at Mom's. Dinner's at 4. Bring your appetite." I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. I typed back a simple thumbs-up emoji. That's all they were going to get from me. The rest of the morning, I worked with Rob in the lot behind my storage unit. His minivan was jacked up, wheels off. I showed him how to spot shaved rotors, how Evan's guys had intentionally ground them down. His daughter toddled around with crayons, and before they left she handed me a drawing, my F-150 towing their van, the sky above filled with squiggly stars. I folded it gently and slid it into the red folder. Proof doesn't always come stamped, sometimes it comes in crayon. At noon, my phone buzzed again. Dwyer's number. "Caro ledger has gaps on the 20th, he said. Whole half hour missing." That's not normal, Mike. His voice carried the kind of weight that makes judges listen. I thanked him, wrote it down, Ledger Gap, November 20th, 2:30 to 3 p.m. By 2 o'clock, I was at my desk in the storage unit, balancing papers on a folding chair. Coach Lila called to check in. Remember what Ms. Cho said, keep it clean. No trespassing, no temper. Let the documents do the talking. I repeated it back like a mantra, let the documents do the talking. That evening, a voicemail landed in my inbox. Linda's voice. Mike, it's easier if you're not here for Mom's dinner. We'll sort the finances Monday. Her tone was syrupy, like she was asking me to pick up milk on the way home. I replayed it 3 times, then saved it to the thumb drive and loaded it onto the Bluetooth speaker. The battery showed full. At 7:10 p.m., Ms. Patel from the bank emailed me a redacted internal memo, HELOC draw processed via branch override due to holiday hours. She added a line, bring ID and original signature samples Tuesday, 9 a.m. I opened the fireproof box in my unit and laid out my passport, our original mortgage documents, my driver's license. Signatures clean, blocky, the way I've signed since 1985. That forgery in Dwyer's ledger wouldn't hold against them. I spent the next hour pacing with index cards, practicing what I'd say at the dinner table. Not angry. Not desperate. Just precise. Exhibit A, B, C, envelope tucked under my plate, speaker hidden in my coat pocket. My cue would be the dessert timer. Ding, and I'd stand. Around 9 p.m., I drove past the house I no longer owned. Lights glowed through the windows. A shadow moved across the blinds, Evan's broad shoulders, unmistakable. My chest tightened. That was my dining room. My chairs. The oak table I built in 2009 with my own hands. Now he was inside, drinking wine at it. I didn't stop. I didn't knock. I just took a photo of the house from the street, timestamp at the top of the screen, November 30th, 9:04 p.m. documentation. Always documentation. Back at the unit, I lined everything up in the red folder. Exhibit A, locksmith sticker photo, November 27th, 6:42 p.m. Exhibit B, $118,000 HELOC slip, November 20th. Exhibit C, Alvarez's $1,462 brake job receipt, November 20th. Exhibit D, 38-second video clip of Evan. Exhibit E, Linda's voicemail, saved to Bluetooth. Bonus, the crayon drawing from Rob's daughter, proof of impact. I zipped the folder shut and slid it under my pillow of bundled clothes. Outside, the city's Christmas lights flickered on. But inside, I was sharpening edges. Tomorrow at 4 p.m., every fork at that dinner table would freeze midair. And for the first time in weeks, I felt calm. Because the truth wasn't just on my side, it was stamped, signed, and waiting to detonate. Sunday, December 1st. The wind had teeth that day. Cleveland's sky hung low and gray, the kind of weather where you feel the cold in your bones. At 3:30 p.m., I parked a block away from Linda's mother's colonial house in Lakewood. I sat in the cab for a long minute, the red folder riding shotgun, the Bluetooth speaker tucked inside my coat. I touched the envelope under my seat, my place card, Exhibit A. My stomach twisted, not with nerves, but with precision. Like lining up a saw blade with pencil marks you only get one cut on. At 3:58, I walked up the walkway. Maple-scented candles burned in the windows. Through the curtains, I saw shadows moving, cousins, aunts, Linda's laugh mixing with Tara's chatter. The door opened before I could knock. Tara stood there, smile bright, eyes scanning me like I was late to my own trial. "Mike, glad you made it. We weren't sure." I just nodded. 3. Expose Evan's garage scam. Step 4. Use all of it at the right stage, in front of the right witnesses. That's when I remembered the dinner. Tara, my sister-in-law, had texted last week about Thanksgiving at their mother's house, Sunday this year, pushed for cousins. 4 p.m. sharp. The invite was still on my phone. I scrolled and reread her cheerful message, complete with exclamation points and turkey emojis. At the time, I'd ignored it. Now I circled it in my notes. That dinner would be the stage. That table would be the witness stand. I underlined holiday dinner equals reveal. I started to think through details like a carpenter planning cuts. Where would I sit? How would I time it? What would land hardest? The Alvarez's video? The $118,000 slip? Or Linda's voicemail, the one where she said it was easier if you're not here? My father's voice echoed again, measure twice, cut once. Thanksgiving Day rolled on without me. Families filled houses with laughter and gravy. Mine was locked, lights warm behind new deadbolts I couldn't open. But I wasn't crying anymore. I was drawing blueprints. I drove back to the unit, laid everything out on the tarp, receipt, slip photos, notes, and arranged them in order like evidence tags. Exhibit A, B, C. Then I drew a little sketch of the dinner table, marked my seat, and wrote play voicemail after dessert timer. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to fight. I was going to read the truth, steady and simple, while the pies cooled on the counter. And I knew, when a lie is exposed in the same room it was told, it doesn't just burn. It detonates. Black Friday in Cleveland feels like the city itself has a hangover. Gray sky sagging, parking lots jammed, breath steaming from every bundled-up shopper chasing deals. But while others were rushing for flat screens, I was chasing paperwork that could save my retirement. At 9:12 a.m., I walked into the county recorder's office. The clerk behind the plexiglass looked half asleep until I slid over the document. A lease pendens, a notice that clouds the title, makes it impossible for Linda or Tara to sell the house clean. Filing fee, $212. She stamped it, slid it back. Received, November 29th, 9:44 a.m. The sound of the stamp landing was like a nail gun driving the first stud into place. The house wasn't safe yet, but it wasn't going anywhere without me. From there, I drove to Precinct 3. Officer Jenkins met me in the lobby. We'd crossed paths before. He'd guest lectured in my shop class about tool theft. Solid guy, steady handshake. I laid the Alvarez's receipt on the table, then queued up the 38-second video clip. Evan's voice spilled out, cocky as ever, we pad the rotors, nobody checks. Jenkins whistled low. You know, we've had 3 brake failures tied to his shop this fall. Almost killed a family on 480. He scribbled notes, wrote the November 20th timestamp in his log. File a consumer fraud complaint. I'll give you the CAD number for the lockout call too. Build a paper trail. By noon, I was standing outside Evan's shop. The bay doors were down for the holiday, but the hand-painted sign still flaked off the cinder block. I snapped photos of the hours, the address, the worn-out inspection stickers on the window. Documentation. Proof that his business wasn't some rumor, it was bricks and mortar, ready to be tied to the receipts. At 1 p.m., I called the notary, L. Caro. Straight to voicemail. A woman's voice, crisp and hurried, leave the document type and date. I left my message, Hellick. November 20th. Patel Bank. Call me back. I hung up, heart thudding, because now she knew someone was digging. At 3:15 p.m., I swung by the house. The deadbolt gleamed like a sneer. The locksmith sticker was still stuck to the jamb, curling at the corner. November 27th, 6:42 p.m. The exact moment I stood on the porch, turkey thawing in my arm, hearing my wife lock me out. I snapped a close-up photo, making sure the timestamp showed. Proof doesn't argue, it just sits there, undeniable. I emailed the images to Ms. Patel at the bank. 10 minutes later she replied, "Fraud hold request initiated. Come Tuesday, 9 a.m., with ID and signature samples." I stopped at a pharmacy, bought a $19 thumb drive, and loaded everything onto it: receipts, video, photos, notes. Then I made 2 backups, one in my jacket, one tucked inside my toolbox. A carpenter knows never to trust a single nail when you can drive 3. That evening, I sat in the truck with the turkey still in the cooler, now half-thawed and useless. I took out a stack of blank place cards from the dollar store and began writing names. Linda. Tara. Evan. Even her mother. On mine, I slipped a thin envelope, marked simply Exhibit A. I rehearsed what I'd say. Not yelling, not pleading. Just reading facts, one by one, like I was in my shop class again, walking students through a diagram. When the oven timer dinged for dessert, I'd open my envelope. When the room went quiet, I'd press play on the tiny Bluetooth speaker tucked in my coat pocket. Linda's voicemail would fill the table. "It's easier if you're not here for Mom's dinner. We'll sort finances Monday." I pictured the faces. The way forks would freeze mid-air. The way her mother's eyes would turn, first to Linda, then to me. The world might think Thanksgiving was over. For me, it was just beginning. The dining room table was set for 10. Lace runner, polished silver, turkey steaming in the center. Linda sat across from me, shoulders squared, jaw tight. Evan poured himself a drink, raising his glass before anyone ate. "Family is everything," he said, smug, as if daring me to flinch. I didn't. I kept my hands folded on the table, envelope resting under my place card. Dinner moved like a play I'd seen too many times: passing platters, forced laughs, little digs. Linda's mother asked if my truck was still holding up. Evan chuckled. "He's more reliable with tools than people, isn't he?" Forks clinked. Nobody laughed. I waited. Because timing is everything. The pies were slid into the second oven at 5:12. Timer set for 18 minutes. My cue. At minute 12, I laid my envelope gently on the tablecloth. "Before dessert," I said, voice steady, "I need to read something." Linda stiffened. "Not now, Mike." I opened the envelope, pulled out the locksmith sticker photo, dated November 27, 6:42 p.m. This is when the locks were changed while I stood outside with Thanksgiving groceries. I slid it across. Fork stopped mid-air. Next came the helix slip, $118,000 draw on November 20th, my signature forged. I let the number sit in the air like smoke. This money left Patel Bank without me knowing. On the same day my brother-in-law's shop billed this family, I placed the $1,462 brake job receipt down, Maria and Rob on FaceTime, their screen glowing in my hand. Evan leaned forward, jaw tightening. Out of context. "You're twisting things." I held the phone up. Rob's voice came through the speaker. "You told me yourself, Evan. We pad the rotors. I recorded you." 38 seconds of his arrogance filled the room. Linda's mother gasped. Tara's fork slipped, clattering on china. Linda's hands balled into fists. The timer dinged. The sound sliced through the silence like a judge's gavel. I reached into my coat, pressed the Bluetooth speaker. Linda's voice played, calm and casual. "It's easier if you're not here for Mom's dinner. We'll sort finances Monday." The words echoed in the room she was sitting in, surrounded by her own family. Her mother turned, eyes burning. "Linda? What is this?" Linda's face crumpled, but she said nothing. Evan slammed his fist down, rattling silverware. "This is garbage." I slid one final page across the table, Mr. Dwyer's note about the forged signature, the gap in Caro ledger. Independent notary confirms it wasn't me. Ledger missing half an hour the same day the loan was pulled. The room went dead quiet. I looked around, slow. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to make a record. Tomorrow morning, the bank will freeze this loan. Tonight, you can deny it. Tomorrow, the money won't be yours to touch. The pies cooled in the kitchen. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence was louder than shouting. Linda's mother broke first. She pushed her chair back, staring at her daughter like she was seeing her for the first time. I raised you better than this. And in that moment, the power shifted. Not with yelling. Not with fists. With documents. With facts. With the truth read aloud in the very room where the lies were told. The timer still ticked faintly in the background, but dessert never came. The main course had already been served. The pies stayed in the oven. Nobody cared anymore. The timer had already gone off, but no one rose to pull them out. The room was heavy, the kind of silence that makes the air itself feel thick. I sat back in my chair, every document already laid out like cards in a game I hadn't asked to play but was damn sure going to win. Evan was the first to move. He shoved his chair back so hard it scraped against the floorboards. You think this proves anything? You think a couple of receipts and some stupid recording mean you can walk in here and embarrass us? I looked at him, steady. Not embarrass. Expose. There's a difference. His face flushed red. He reached for the papers, but I pulled the red folder close before his hand could land. Touch these, and you'll add tampering to your list of problems. Linda sat rigid, eyes fixed on the runner in the middle of the table. She wouldn't look at me. Wouldn't look at her mother either. But her mother stared holes through her, voice shaking. Linda, tell me this isn't true. Linda's throat moved, but no sound came out. Her silence said enough. That's when Officer Jenkins shifted in his chair at the far end of the table. He wasn't there for turkey, he'd come as Cousin Amy's +1, at my quiet request earlier in the week. He stood, badge visible on his belt, and cleared his throat. Mike, why don't we step outside for a moment? We walked onto the porch, breath fogging in the cold. Jenkins folded his arms. You've got solid evidence. Tomorrow morning, file the formal complaint. The dinner's your stage, but the paperwork is where the hammer lands. Inside, voices were rising. Evan yelling, Tara hissing about, buyers waiting. Linda's mother's voice breaking, you changed the locks on Thanksgiving Eve? You forged your husband's name? The door opened a crack. Her mother held out a trembling hand, one of my envelopes pinched between her fingers. I've got my copy. Don't worry, Mike. You're not the crazy one here. She shut the door again, leaving me and Jenkins in the cold. Evan stormed out a minute later, shoulders hunched, face red as the November wind. He brushed past me without a glance, muttering under his breath. Tara followed, whispering furiously at him about listings and commissions. The tires of his SUV screeched as he peeled away from the curb. I stood there a long moment, the folder tucked against my chest. Jenkins gave me a card with a case number on it. Don't lose it. That break video alone could open a fraud investigation. You did the right thing tonight, kept it civil, no shouting, no fists. Judges noticed that. When I finally walked back to my truck, the turkey was still in the cooler, useless and half-thawed. The symbol of the holiday I'd lost sat heavy beside me. But in my other hand, I held something more valuable, a stack of documents no one at that table could unhear or unsee. I didn't go to a motel. Didn't drive to a friend's couch. Instead, I went back to Unit C-12. Rolled the tarp out again, red folder under my jacket like a pillow. The wind whistled down the corridor of units, carrying faint echoes of holiday music from some distant radio. But in my head, all I could hear was Linda's mother's voice, you forged your husband's name? I didn't sleep much. At 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Linda: "You made a fool of yourself. We'll deal with this Monday." I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. Then I took a screenshot, filed it in the folder. Proof doesn't care about insults, it cares about dates and times. By dawn, the plan was clear. Sunday night had been the reveal. Monday morning would be the reckoning. At 8 a.m., I drove past the house again. Curtains drawn, no lights on. Evan's SUV was gone. Linda's car sat crooked in the driveway. I didn't stop. I just took another photo, time-stamped, and drove on. At 8:45, I parked in Patel Bank's lot, folder on the passenger seat, and leaned back in my chair. Tomorrow, I'd walk in with every piece of evidence and watch the fraud hold slam shut. The dinner had been the explosion. Tomorrow would be the cleanup. But standing outside that house, seeing the people who'd tried to strip me of everything, they didn't look like winners. They looked like tenants in a house of cards. And I was the one holding the hammer. Monday morning, December 2nd. The air was brittle, the kind of cold that makes your lungs ache when you breathe. I parked in Patel Bank's lot at 8:58 a.m., folder on the passenger seat, thumb drive in my jacket, my father's old carpenter's pencil tucked behind my ear out of habit. The turkey still sat in the cooler, more symbol than food now, but I left it in the truck. What mattered was inside the folder. The lobby smelled of pine garland and fresh paper. Ms. Patel greeted me herself, her hand firm, her eyes sharper than the bank glass around us. "Mr. Reed, let's go over everything." In her office, I laid out my documents one by one. Passport. Mortgage copy with my real signature. Locksmith sticker photo with the date, November 27th, 6:42 p.m. The Helix slip from Dwyer's ledger, showing $118,000 drawn on November 20th, "That's not my signature," I said. "I've written it the same way for 30 years. You can check any check, any loan, any tax form." She didn't argue. She slid the papers into a scanner, one after the other. Then she held up her hand. "That's enough. We'll initiate a fraud hold immediately. The funds are frozen, pending investigation. A suspicious activity report will be filed today." I felt something inside me unclench. Like the first breath after holding it too long under cold water. At 11:30, I met Mr. Dwyer at the county sheriff's office. He was in a thick wool coat, ledger tucked under his arm. He signed a sworn note that the signature wasn't mine and that Carol ledger had gaps. He slipped me a copy. "Carpenters build houses," he said. "But paper builds the law." From there, I drove straight to Precinct 3. Jenkins met me at the counter, crisp uniform, steady eyes. He'd already logged the Alvarez's video and receipt. "We've got 3 other complaints lined up," he told me. Same pattern, brake failures, inflated charges, November 20th tied in 2 of them. He handed me a public records form for my lockout incident, now officially entered. Case number neatly written at the top. At 1 p.m., I sat in the union lawyer's office downtown, Ms. Cho. She was younger than I expected, sharp suit, sharper questions. She looked over my folder like it was blueprints. "We'll file an emergency motion for exclusive use of the residence pending fraud review," she said. "It won't settle everything, but it'll get you back inside legally while the investigation plays out." By 3 o'clock, the filing was in front of Judge Hall. He read it slow, lips pressed thin, then signed. "Order granted, Michael Reed granted exclusive occupancy pending resolution. Spouse barred from altering, selling, or disposing of property." I exhaled again. Second breath in one day. At 5 o'clock, I hired a locksmith. $185. Legal, on paper, receipt in hand. As he swapped the deadbolts, I filmed the entire walkthrough of the house for inventory. Every room, every corner. In the office, I found a realtor folder marked pre-listing photo checklist. On the kitchen counter, a sticky note in Linda's handwriting, close before December 15th. Not anymore. My phone buzzed at 7:12. A text from Maria. He offered us $300 to delete the video. We saved the text. I smiled for the first time in days. Proof has a way of multiplying when the guilty panic. That night, I sat at my own kitchen table with a cup of coffee and the red folder spread wide. For the first time since Thanksgiving Eve, I wasn't outside looking in. The bank account was frozen. The court order was signed. The garage scam was under investigation. Piece by piece, justice was taking shape. And for the first time in a week, I let myself believe, I wasn't the one being carved up anymore. I was the one carving. Wednesday morning, December 4th. I sat at the kitchen table I built with my own hands back in 2009. The oak grain ran straight, steady, no warping after all these years. Coffee steamed in my mug, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator. For the first time in over a week, I wasn't bracing for the next blow. I spread the red folder across the table and laid the pages out in order, like planks in a frame. November 20th, the $118,000 Helic draw. November 20th, the Alvarez's $1,462 brake job and Evans' recorded voice. November 27th, locksmith sticker, proof the lockout happened at 6:42 p.m. November 28th, Linda's voicemail about staying away. December 1st, dinner table reveal. December 2nd to 3rd, fraud hold, sworn notary note, exclusive occupancy order. Looking at it lined up that way, it felt less like chaos and more like carpentry. Measure twice, cut once. The whole mess had dimensions now, dates, amounts, signatures. You could build something solid out of it. I thought about Linda. About the day we signed our first mortgage. We stood side by side, hands shaking, laughing at the size of the numbers. I thought that house was our anchor, our retirement, our future. Turns out it was just another account she could drain when family came calling. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the same way. The rage had burned off. What was left was sharper, colder. I wasn't out for blood. I was out for boundaries. And I had them now, in black ink and court stamps. Friday, December 6th, snow flurries drifted across Clifton Boulevard, catching in the holiday lights strung between lampposts. The world looked festive, but I wasn't thinking about gifts or carols. I was thinking about court filings, case numbers, and signatures that finally carried weight again. That morning, with Ms. Cho's guidance, I filed a consumer fraud complaint against Evans' Garage. She warned me it might take months, but the foundation was laid. Patel Bank had already moved the Helic draw into a suspense account while the investigation played out. My house, the pension I'd built nail by nail, wasn't going anywhere. At 10:15, I met Rob and Maria at the bank. They looked tired but hopeful. Ms. Patel joined us in her office, sliding a document across the table. "We've processed a chargeback on the $1,462, she said. "Expect the funds within 5 business days." Rob squeezed Maria's hand so tightly her knuckles went white. "You don't know what this means," he told me. I shook my head. "You filmed the truth. That's what means something." By noon, Evans' Garage posted a handwritten sign, "Closed until further notice." I knew because Jenkins texted me a photo, time-stamped and saved for the file. "Calls are piling in," his message read. "He won't outrun this one." That afternoon, Linda's attorney sent over a proposal: sell the house, escrow the proceeds, split after debts. I didn't even blink before refusing. Judge Hall's order gave me exclusive occupancy, and I intended to use every inch of it. At dusk, I hired another locksmith. This time, the receipt was in my name. $185 for peace of mind. I handed a duplicate key to Jenkins, as required by the court order for inventory. No more deadbolts turning behind my back. I went home and opened the fireproof box I'd bought on clearance years ago. Into it went 3 copies of everything: the notarized statement, the bank freeze notice, the locksmith receipts, the recording of Evan's voice, Linda's voicemail. I tucked the crayon drawing from Rob's daughter inside too. Not legal proof, but moral proof. Sometimes those are heavier. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table, coffee cooling in front of me, and wrote in my notebook, I didn't lose the house. I reclaimed it. For the first time since Thanksgiving Eve, I felt something like steadiness. Not victory exactly. More like balance. My hands had stopped shaking. My voice no longer cracked when I replayed the voicemail. At 9 p.m., I looked over at the fridge. My union card was pinned there under a magnet. I flipped it over and wrote a line on the back: boundaries are not revenge. They're carpentry. Because that's what I'd done: measured, cut, nailed. Built a boundary that could hold. I leaned back, the lights from Clifton twinkling outside the window, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself believe tomorrow might not bring another blow. Tomorrow might actually belong to me. Tuesday, December 10th. The first real snow of the season drifted over Cleveland, quiet and relentless. The world looked fresh, clean, as if it had been sanded down and repainted. But some stains don't wash away. That morning, a local consumer reporter ran a short TV segment: Holiday Break Scams Under Investigation. The shop sign was blurred, but everyone in our part of town knew the building. Calls started pouring in. By noon, Evan's garage was shuttered, the "closed until further notice" sign flapping in the wind. His reputation, once swagger and grease-stained charm, was now nothing but smoke. At 2 p.m., I got an email from Ms. Patel. Attached was the preliminary forensic report, signature incongruent with exemplars. Likely traced forgery. That single line was worth more than the $118,000 they'd tried to steal. Caro, the notary, resigned quietly. The bank held the funds frozen, and Linda's lawyer suddenly softened his tone. The proposal came that evening: Linda would keep her car, her personal property, and cooperate with the bank's fraud inquiry. I would keep the house, refinance in my own name, and we'd file an uncontested divorce after New Year's. No battle over furniture, no drawn-out hearings. Just paper, signatures, boundaries. I accepted. Not to punish her. To finish. The next day, I met Rob and Maria at a small diner near the interstate. They brought their kids, who pressed crayon drawings into my hands: one of our house, snow on the roof, a truck in the driveway. "You saved us," Maria said softly. I shook my head. "No. You filmed him. You saved yourselves." We sat there for hours, sipping coffee that went cold, watching snow fall outside. For once, I wasn't the one stranded. I wasn't the one locked out. That night, I came home to the house that had almost slipped through my fingers. I strung one line of lights across the porch, nothing fancy. Just enough to remind me it was mine again. Inside, I set the turkey in the oven at last. 12 days late, but still good. The smell filled the kitchen, steady and familiar, like time itself had reset. I walked from room to room, turning the key in every new lock, listening to the click. My click, not theirs. And as I sat at the table, the same oak table Evan had mocked me over, I wrote the last line in my notebook: "You didn't lose me, you gave me away." And I walked back with the deed, the receipts, and my name. Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, I was finally home.